Hi, chess friends. This is Sir Glenn, and we will now learn another system for black or for white. For white and black, actually. Ito ay yung tinatawag nating London system. Okay? Basically, London system is characterized by the structure, by the following structure. Okay? You put your pawns on the 4c3, e3, creating a pyramid-like structure, and then placing your bishops on f4 and e2 respectively, and your knights on f3 and d2. Okay, there are some times that this placement is also used, but most commonly is this structure. Okay, eventually after h3, bishop h2, that completes the idea or the basic setup of the London system. Now, okay naman ang London system, no? The main problem kasi sa London system, it's considered solid and gives white a very playable middle game. But it also gives black, since there is no pressure in the position, it also gives black equal chances of gaining advantage in the game. Actually, simply by copying white gives black already a pleasant game or an equal game, no? And after an eventual bishop d3, capture capture, bishop d6, capture capture, or even castle castle, c3, c6, knight bd2, knight bd7. As one can see, no, parehas na parehas yung position. So anything can happen, but it's usually equal yung position, no? Very equal yung position. Or after bishop d6, white can actually play knight e5, and then after knight bd7, capture, queen takes, capture, queen takes. It goes back to the same position. So it's usually advisable for white not to capture immediately, but let black do it. So after castle, castle, knight d2, c5, and then c3. I'm sorry, c3 gives both sides equal chance for advantage. Pero sa position na to, after eventually black can play queen e7, magiging equal ang position. Actually, after c5, white has an interesting move here. He can play knight c6, takes, and then bishop takes d6. So in order to prevent that, instead of playing c5 agad, black can opt to play queen e7, so that after c3, he can play c5 with no problem because the bishop on d6 is defended. Eventually, magiging dry or equal ang position after the following moves or after a couple of piece exchanges. So if London system gives black a dry, boring equal game, what can we do as black, when we are faced by the London system? Okay, most of us playing in tournaments would often see or say that we often play in tournaments, and what's frustrating is when white plays a very unambitious opening, no, gusto lang niya yung solid position, hintayin ka lang niya magkamali, magkukunat-kunat lang siya, and then will exchange pieces and will eventually go to the end game, which favors the more experienced players. So I will now present you some systems to use with black when white plays London system against you. So let's first try to see. I usually group the players eventually either by playing King's Indian or the solid system, which is starts from d5. So after d4, well, players may be King's Indian or d5 players. What do I mean by that? Okay, most players would play either the King's Indian, which characterized by this setup, and then eventually would either play c5 or e5 or a combination of those, or it may be to those players who play the classical style, which is d5, knight f6, bishop f5, maybe c6 style, London reverse, or this pawn can actually be hit on c5. This kind of setup, okay, this particular type of development is one group of players, which is, I think I belong to that group. Okay, first of all, let's discuss the setup coming from the King's Indian for the players who would choose to play the King's Indian against the London system. So let's play that. d4, bishop f4, going straight to the London system. d6. I usually play d6 first before g6 because I have an experience before. I played g6 and my opponent mysteriously played bishop e5, and after let's say bishop g7, knight f I mean e3, d6, he plays bishop takes, and then f4, transposing to the Stonewall version without the bad bishop. So from then on, actually I that game was drawn because of particularly I'm not. This is the first time I encountered that position, but I would know what to do next time. Which is, this position is not actually bad for black, but eventually, uh, what can see here is that well, white has a satisfactory position to say the least, but black can hold its own. So ever since that, I tried to play more carefully. So after bishop f4, I intend to play d6 first before g6. So after d6, knight f3, g6. Usually the play normally would go e3, bishop g7, bishop e2, both sides castle, and then knight c6. Now there are some players who would try to play knight h5, trying to catch the bishop. But after bishop g5, h6, and bishop h4, if he continues to play h5 in order for him to capture the bishop after bishop g3, he will be surprised that instead of white cooperating with him or retreating the bishop, white would simply play knight f to d2, attacking the knight on h5. So that after pawn takes bishop, bishop takes knight, it gives black a distorted pawn structure, double pawn siya sa h-file, and gives white some quite chance to you know, try to steer the game into his favor dahil nga sa pawn structure, destroyed pawn structure niya. So from this position, h6 is not recommended, therefore knight c6 is played. And after c4, which is recommended against players who does not play d5, this particular setup of the London, c4 and knight c3 is recommended. So after c4, bishop f5, knight c3, then rook e8. Well, we can say that white has some chances to attack on the queen side undisturbed dahil let's say for example black plays h6, not to trap the bishop but to simply put it away from the pressure of this diagonal kasi mag-e5 yung black no? So let's say after that black plays g5, bishop g3, and then e5. May chance kasi yung black na ma-pressure tong structure ng pawn structure ng black sa c7, d6, and e5. d5 here would be a mistake kasi mawawala yung pressure ng bishop na to. At saka yung dark square bishop ng white sa g3 ay mawawala ng kwenta dahil very solid yung pawns ng black na nakaposition sa dark square. No? Thereby, he loses some activity. So it's not really recommended. But what is recommended is for white to try to expand to the queen side. After a3, a3, a5, white will eventually prepare for b4, no? And then push b5. Or he can actually play rook c1, eventually followed up by c5, which gives white quite a good position, no? Because of the pressure sa pawn structure na to. Okay, so eventually kapag nagawa niyang maipush yung b for c5, gives him quite a playable position. Let's say for example, here if black plays e4, it gives in to his idea of c5, which makes the c5 push stronger. So black would eventually be better off by not playing e4 at the moment. Ganun din yung white, no? So if this happens, medyo deadlock yung position. I would say equal chances siguro for both sides, but I'm in favor of black when it comes to, you know, git-gitan, kasi yung position niya sa center is more solid or more easier to develop towards the center. Maybe because advantage siya sa development, so connected na yung rooks niya, all his pieces is on play, while white still has to develop his rook queen to some better place, no? Okay, so now let us look on the following move order. After bishop e4, d6, e3, g6, knight f3. Okay, I discovered that it's better to chase white's bishop, or white's London bishop, this dark square bishop, the f4 bishop, right now before playing bishop g7. Why? We will later on discover. After bishop g5, h6, and then bishop h4, instead of after g5 and then knight bd2, knight g7, after bishop g3, knight f5, huli yung London bishop. And we all know sa London system, pag namatay na yung London bishop, usually black will have the advantage na. After let's say bishop e2, bishop g7, we will wait for white to castle kingside bago natin patayin yung bishop, no? c3, let's try to still wait. Knight c6, and then castle. That's the time that we capture the bishop, and then we castle too. Once black plays queen e8 followed by e5, or rook e8 followed by e5, it will be to his advantage, no? This position favors black. So therefore, instead of white playing e3 at once, or knight f3, g6, instead of playing e3, some London players would play h3 para nga naman hindi mahuli yung bishop. So black has nothing better but to develop the bishop on bishop g7, and then e3, castle, bishop e2, knight c6. Well, I'd say d5 is not really good move for white, not because of knight takes d5, queen takes d5, bishop b2, dahil I would say na in this position lugi nga yung white, but eventually this bishop will be trapped later on. Let's say for example c3, bishop takes rook, queen b3, and then let's say for example bishop f5, knight d2 followed by castle, and then rook takes bishop. I don't know if knight a5 can save him kasi may queen a3, and after b6, castle kingside, I think black has nothing better but bishop takes, and then queen takes, and c5. para mawala yung pressure sa c5. Um, yes, this is playable, but I'm not really a fan of um, kasi you give too many minor pieces to white. This he can try to attack the king kasi nawala na yung defender niya, which is bishop g7, which may lead to some attack for him, no? But I don't say that this is bad for black. No, this is playable. This is definitely playable for black. Well, in this position, castle king side instead of d5, and then black plans to play e5, but not now. Kasi let's say for example, black plays rook e8, and then white plays c4. E5 is not immediately playable because after e5, pawn takes, merong tirang ganito, queen takes queen. And this gives white the opportunity to win a pawn here. So let's try to go back. So instead of e5, black needs to play bishop f5 first, and after knight c3, only then e5. Bishop h2, and then black can try to play for the king side press, no, starting with e4, knight d2, probably h5, and then it will be a race, white against black's, well, black's king side attack versus white's queen side avalanche. So after queen e7, rook b1, a5, a3, and then eventually black will try to play for king side here, maybe by starting king h7, rook g8, g5, h4, eventually bishop h6, and eventually g4. Let's try to see that from happening. Rook g8, b5, knight b8 in order to better reposition the knight on d7, knight b3, let's say knight bd7, rook c1, bishop h6, and then c5. Okay, so as you can see, both sides have the equal opportunity of attack, but I played this hundreds of times in blitz games, not online, but in blitz games in chess clubs, sa park chess. I usually play chess at parks, and most of the players that I meet have the chance to checkmate me or to create a devastating attack on the king side. No, sometimes it was not successful because I was able to open lines on the queen side, but eventually I feel that black's position here is very strong. No, he can actually play h4. Even I defend myself with king h1, he will just go g5, and then double rooks here, and then when g4 comes, I'm sure to get mated, or I'm sure to get to be under a very heavy attack from black. So I don't recommend that to play for white. So some players for black, instead of playing knight c6 and eventually playing e5, c5 is actually playable. No, after eventual knight c3, knight c6, bishop e2, bishop f5, castle kingside, and then knight e4. After, let's say, rook c1, knight takes, rook takes, and then eventually maybe queen b6 is playable here, or even c takes d4, pawn takes, and then queen b6. I'm in favor for black here. That's why why I'm in favor. First of all, yung pressure nasa diagonal, yung black's bishop g7 bishop is a monster. Plus the bishop on f5 is also strong. And black's queenside pressure gives white some problems, while white has to sit there and try to solve every little details of his position. Practically, black is on the offensive and white is on the defensive. So, puti ka pero ikaw ang dumidepensa, it's not really healthy. Okay, now let us look at the position wherein black plays t5 naman. Okay? If black plays t5 and white tries to play the London system, straight London system, I don't usually recommend it, pero if white plays that, it gives black plenty of strategy to play against this. Kasi nga, alam niya na London system siya. Black will actually play okay. Sorry for that. Nasa computer shop ako eh. So that was the timer. I extended my time already. But anyway, black can play c6. And then after e3, let's say e3, queen b6. No? Attacking the b2 pawn. And white cannot do better by playing b3 or queen c1. And black can play against those moves very easily. You can play bishop, knight f6. Well, not knight f3 kasi may bishop g4. We try to rule that out, so we play bishop e2. Then bishop f5, knight f3, e6, castle, knight bd7, or not knight bd7 but c5, because if black plays knight bd7, eventually white plays c4, knight c3, a3, c5, b4 gives which gives white some play sa queen side, no? So we don't want that to happen, so instead of, we like black to play that, so it forces white to play c3. And after knight c6, knight bd2, rook c1, siya yung may play sa queen side, eventual queen side, no? Because after rook c1, that exposes his rook to this diagonal. So, say for example, yan ang play niya, bishop a3. And after rook b2, bishop b2, huli yung rook, no? So, it's not really recommended. If he captures with the e pawn, the same thing will happen. Okay. So, nakita natin yan, no? Yung weakness na yan. Kahit na knight will go the same thing. And then, no, not the same thing, but because after knight, dito yung naka-place, no? If he captures the pawn with the knight, and we do it like that, pag kinapture niya, makakain yung rook sa stage. So we play this first, no, instead of capturing that. Okay. Actually, hindi siya recommended kasi white can play this. And then after we play that, he can check. He can check here. It's black to move ba? White to move? It's white to move. He can check on b6. So that's really recommended. So instead, we play first bishop g6. And later, bishop a3. If white tries to prevent that by playing b4, this pawn becomes a target. We play a5, a3. And then, we play something like, well, I guess this is good enough for black. And then knight e4. Okay, followed by bishop t6, which more or less gives, I mean, bishop e7 is better. Kasi after bishop d6, capture, may check siya sa b5. So bishop e7 is better, and eventually castle. And then, it gives black quite some pressure on the weak c3 pawn, no? Pwede siya mag double rooks dito mamaya. Pwede niya i-pressure yung pawn ng paganyan, no? White is really in a bad way. So therefore, instead of the immediate bishop f4 against t5, he would do best to play knight f3 first to keep black from guessing whether he will play the London system or not. So if that's the case, black can actually tries to wait for white to play that, and once he plays h3, it's now obvious that he will play the London system because that is usually played. Earlier sa King's Indian, nakita natin yung waiting move na yan. But now, black plays c5. And then after c3, black plays queen b6. Hindi na makakalabas yung bishop unless na mag-create siya ng weakness by playing b3, no? So he would eventually play a different course, which is the Collie system, or maybe even queen c2, and then later bishop f4, no? Which I don't really like queen c2 because the queen is exposed on the c file. After knight c6, actually after knight c6, parsado na naman siya rito sa weakness, no? He cannot just play bishop f4 because of the eventual win of the pawn. So he would be forced to play e3, and after, let's say for example, g6, bishop e2, and then bishop f5, white is almost forced to play queen b3, no? Kasi para hindi sayang yung tempo niya. And after c4, I believe this is to white's advantage, no? Para siyang version ng London na boxed in or nasa loob yung bishop niya. This bishop on c1 is really not doing anything, no? Space advantage for black, and black has all the play. So we'll now try to see what will happen. Black plays c5 and then c3, queen b6, and white tries to play queen b3 at once, so that after knight c6 he can capture this, and then he can play bishop f4, no? Yun yung plano niya. If that's the case, if c3 is played at once, we try to play bishop f5 first. No, not bishop f5, knight c6 first. And after bishop f4, we'll try to insert this, so that after queen b6 we can play this move. Okay, this wins a pawn for us because after queen takes, we can play knight takes knight first, and before capturing b6, and this wins a pawn for us, a good healthy pawn. Okay, well, if that's the case, black will sometimes change the move order, that instead of playing knight f6, he will play c5 at once. And we can now see that after c3, and then queen b6, or actually knight f6 first. Knight f6, well, bishop f4 is now playable. Queen b6, e3, knight c6. Oh no, I'm sorry, not e3. No, e3. White will now play queen b3, no? And it will be a different thing since we cannot win the pawn here. And if we play takes, black can actually take the queen first, and after takes here, he can either play like this or take the knight first and then play this, no? Which somehow gives white some advantage. Not some advantage. For kapalit ng dalawang bishop, double pawn yung black. So basically, may imbalance sila parehas. Okay? That's why I don't like this line. Okay, on the next part of my video series, I will deal with this move order, c5, c3, and what should black do with the rest. Okay, thank you for listening. So don't forget to click like or subscribe and share this video to your friends, and also don't forget to watch the part 2 of this video series. Thank you for watching. Bye.